Good morning, Brian.
Morning, Colleen.
How are you?
Well, I got up early and did my 2-mile walk,
Good for you.
and now we're having a little technical difficulties with my nieces and nephew. Debbie's in the other room trying to get them on.
Oh, okay.
They're in, my nieces are 3 of the most beautiful girls you've ever seen, and they're in Rochester, New York. Her
Wow.
mother's a nurse and her father's a policeman. So you can imagine what they're going through.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, definitely.
And then my nephew is, or grandnephew is in Virginia Beach, and he's the one whose father is the person I told you about.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't say it online.
Uh-huh. Hi, Deborah. I think you're on mute.
There we go. Gotta find all those buttons.
Mm-hmm.
How's everybody holding up?
Holding up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Waiting for the daily change from the government.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
up to my eyeballs trying to help people that got these PPP loans use it for the right thing, get it used up within the 8 weeks, so they can
Well,
get.
they keep changing what is and what isn't. I mean, I read these things, I just shake my head.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of hard to hit the target when it keeps moving.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Do a lot
And
of your
now-
clients, Deborah, they've already received the funds and their 8 weeks have started?
Yes, and they can't reopen. That's the big kicker.
Right.
You know, is what do? You know, there's one client that I told her, I says, you know what, you might as well just wrap it up. Take the money you have, pay off your local vendors, because even if you get to reopen, the social distancing is going to make you even more unprofitable than you were. I mean, they were barely making it, and half of their clientele has been put on permanent layoff.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
you know, their particular company doesn't see anything happening for 2 years. Oops. All the puppies are going out. So yeah,
I see John Ralston has joined us. And Linda. Good morning, John. John, I spoke to your son, was it yesterday? I don't know, these days run together for me lately. The day he was coming back from Arizona. Yeah. But so we, you know, the federal government funds procurement, technical assistance centers and counselors. And the one that's supposed to be covering our county in Jefferson County as well is located in Kitsap County. And they just, they don't support us. They've said, sorry, we don't have any travel dollars. And so, and they're located within the they're located within the Kitsap County EDC, my equivalent for Kitsap County. And I've talked to the head of the Kitsap County EDC, real nice guy, John Powers, and he said, Colleen, listen, they're never going to support you. We're never going to support you. We support Kitsap County. So I think part of this funding that the county receives may go towards paying to do that work. And the PTAC network has said that they would allow that person to use their software, be part of their network. And so that person can help local businesses get local government contracts and state contracts and federal contracts. And one of the big things I'd like that individual to work on is the fact that the state level because of the lawsuit with the tribes, and I think it was the state or DOT that passed a few years back, that there are going to be over 100 culverts that are built in our county over the next few years. And the first one was announced at Siebert and Bagley Creek, and that's 30.8 million. But, you know, Scarcella Brothers got the contract, and only one local person, one local company that isn't headquartered here is going to be involved with that. So the majority of the funding, once again, is the area. They're even bringing the rock and asphalt in from Kitsap County. So anyway, I think that'll be a good opportunity for our community to try to have more involvement and more of the funds stay locally rather than, hi, good morning, Mary Jane and Carolyn and Randy.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And Christine Walsh Rogers from First Fed. I see you're on as well. Thanks for joining us, Christine.
Good morning.
Mary Jane, and I assume you will, but we're going to be hopping off at 8:30, but we'll continue this if people want to continue a discussion. Brian Garrett, our board chair, will continue to host the meeting, but Congressman Kilmer has set up a call for folks in the that are equivalent, the EDCs of his district, to talk about some anyway, opportunities associated with the Economic Development Administration. Rick's on as well. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. My laptop is acting like it has COVID, so we'll see how this goes.
Dana, are there any updates you want to provide to when we get kicked off here?
Sorry, you asked me?
Good morning, Mark Hanna.
Yes.
Mary Jane, it looks like you're frozen on our end.
Well,
I'm
I'm
going
moving around.
to-
You look frozen too, Colleen.
Do I?
I'm going to turn off my video because sometimes it's here it for us both to be on video calls. If that helps a bit.
I'm going to mute myself here.
Supposed to be on video call, that's switched.
Great, and Mike Rieckhoff from the SBDC has also joined us. Well, I guess we will go ahead and kick this off. I'm Gibson to see if he. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning. This is an open, a pretty open conversation. It's not meant to be formatted, so people can ask questions, and our business advisors and others that have a lot of, that are directly involved in the pandemic relief programs can provide updates to everyone. So one thing I want to share is that we've been hearing quite a bit yesterday and today, a lot about fraud that's going on. Even within Clallam EDC, one of our employees received someone applied for pandemic unemployment assistance from using their name and their social security number. And I know it's happening in governments, it's happening in nonprofit organizations, and it's definitely happening in businesses, typically with employees that have not been laid off. And so the first thing they see is a letter from the ESD saying, you know, thank you for applying for your pandemic unemployment assistance. And so that, I think it's something that ESD is coming out with some procedures that they want business owners and governments to be looking at to ensure that there isn't false information or false claims that are being applied for. Does anybody else have any information about that topic to add?
Colleen, I have a question about one of the people I work with. They furloughed their help. They're trying to gear back up, and they applied for their unemployment. They're trying to gear back up, but this particular employee, they're afraid to bring back because of her medical conditions, and they wonder if they're going to be ostracized for not bringing her back. So they're thinking about what's going on in her life and her exposure if they open back up. If they totally lay her off, are there any ramifications that might apply to them? Because she has gotten her unemployment, you know, based on the fact that she, you know, possibly was going to be called back.
So, Mike, or I would not think there's any possible ramifications, but I'd hear from Mike or our SCORE counselor or some others what their perspective is on that.
I would say that she's not under any concern there as far as bringing them back, because that would also qualify for the emergency sick leave based on those circumstances. And so she qualified under either one. I think leaving her on unemployment basically at this point until you bring her back.
Hey, Mike, I think you're coming in really echoey. And Carolyn, would you go on mute, please? We hear your dog. I don't know if you can fix that. Do anything about that, Mike.
So what, I don't know what I was still that way. I wonder if it's picking up from somewhere.
So if you guys can go on mute until you want to speak, I'll go on mute as well. Maybe that will help.
It feels like the entire internet is slow this morning. I thought it was just me, but I'm realizing it's everybody.
So one of my questions for Debbie would be, do they plan on trying to replace that person or leave the position vacant?
Try that again. Debbie, his question was, does your client intend to replace that person, or will they leave that position vacant?
They have to replace the person because it's a key office position. And so they will
Okay.
have to bring in somebody that is trained or that they're willing to train to take this person's place. Now, this person is in her 70s as well and has medical conditions. She probably should have retired a number of years ago, but yeah, it's hard to make that kind of decision.
Yeah, okay, well, how about if Mike and Debbie take that question offline and maybe with a better, just a phone call or something.
Okay,
If
I'll
you
call Mike.
need, okay, great. And Brandino Gibson said he will be joining us at 8:30. But I mentioned earlier that I'm gonna have to jump off at 8:30 for a phone call, but Brian Garrett, our board chair, will continue to host the meeting. So has anybody else received any information about the fraudulent pandemic unemployment assistance claims that from through ESD, any guidance for businesses to ensure that their employees aren't being, their social security numbers aren't being compromised? And
If they're filing claims, they know them.
what, John?
Oh, sorry. We're working on that at the port, and the social security numbers are definitely compromised because you have to have the full number to file the claim. So that
Right.
kind of goes without saying, been
Well-
compromised.
Well, I guess I misspoke. My question though is, how can a business be proactive to ensure that they are being more on top of addressing the issue? And if it happens, what are those steps someone should take? Peggy, do you have any information on that? I guess that's something we're going to have to get back to you on. We'll put something out in constant contact as soon as ESD provides information about what the steps are. Yeah, obviously, if it's occurred, their social security number was already compromised, but if there's something that if that happens, I would think a business owner would want to jump on it as soon as possible. And I hope there are steps a series of steps that a business owner can provide to an employee as to what they should be doing to address that situation.
Hey, Colleen, I talked to ESD yesterday, and their only response so far is to direct everyone to that website, the ESD website that was linked in the article that I sent out that you saw.
Okay, I'll send that out. And again, Brandino will be on at 8:30, and they're giving additional guidance out this morning. But he's got an 8 o'clock call with ESD.
Colleen, I got a question here. One of my clients, I think, had his idle loan approved, and then he got information coming back from SBA that his portal account had been set up. So is that typical for this process? Once you get the loan approved, that they have this portal account, and then you can access when your payments are due and all that kind of stuff? I hadn't heard anything about this. So is that understandable?
News to me. I haven't heard of that.
Well, he was a little concerned because he got the email back from SBA with the link out there to get his portal account accessed. And then,
Walsh Rogers from First Federal, and I've heard about this, and I asked the SBA a little bit. So earlier in April, businesses started submitting applications for the EIDL loan and EIDL grant. And some of the businesses on here likely got some money deposited in their account in the last 6 weeks from SBA in the $1,000 to $10,000 range. That's the grant portion of it. The other email you're getting is to apply for to complete the application for the rest of an EIDL loan. So if you wanted to get, let's say, $100,000 EIDL loan and you got your grant portion, you'd still have to use that link through the portal to apply for your full loan. If you don't apply for the full loan, or you're not granted that full loan, the amount you got in the original deposit, that EIDL grant money, is not repayable.
Right, but he said that it had nothing to do with the advance of the grant. It was the loan itself, so.
Right. So that's
Anyway.
if they're borrowing money that's repayable, that's what the portal is for, exclusively.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Christine.
You're welcome. Just for the repayable port.
Christine, what if somebody got a deposit for $5,000 on the advance, but they end up closing because it's not going to be profitable for them to reopen?
Yeah. So the EIDL, that advance that was deposited into accounts is not repayable. So if your business doesn't open, as far as I understand, that portion is not repayable. It's just the remainder of the loan that would be. And my understanding is the emails that everyone is getting now is to proceed with the loan portion and not the grant portion.
And Debbie,
That's my understanding as well, Debbie. The first 10,000, if it's a grant, is just exactly that. And it is irrelevant what the business is doing. That does not have to be repaid.
I thought the EIDL loans, that they shut those down. So go back in and try and apply for more than just the grant. What is the process there?
Well, so that they had to have earlier applied. They received $372 billion worth of applications, and they only had $120 billion in total between the two rounds of funding. And so they're not reopening it except for to ag businesses. And so also the advice came out that if your confirmation number when you first applied, whether that, and everybody had to reapply through the new portal system where you also had the opportunity to apply for the EIDL grant, that where I did the video, that portal system. If you did apply and then you're in the queue, and then it's sounding as though if they only provided $20 billion in total for those EIDL grants. The rest of the $100 billion is for EIDL loans. They haven't reopened that, but if you did apply for it either prior to that portal opening, or if you're one of those that applied for the grant, they will contact you and say, do you want to apply for a loan also? You can say no, and then your account is closed. Or if you say yes, then they'll begin the loan paperwork with you. Does that make sense? So I wanted to give just two updates on other topics. One,
actually, Colleen, can I jump in
Yes.
real quick?
yes,
One other
please do.
one other scenario that I've encountered where I've been advising people to use the portal. A lot of our small independent contractors were putting, they put incorrect information in there. For instance, they put the wrong business owner. And so they never heard anything back. And so for those folks, I've said, you know what, the portal's there, try to reapply and hopefully something will happen. But that's not official, but that's just a shot in the dark for those folks who messed up their initial filing. So.
There we go. So two other topics I wanted to address. One is the Working Washington be receiving some information about the governor's decision on which companies will be receiving that grant end of this week or beginning of next week. So, and I will receive that information, and then we will be contacting those companies that were awarded funds and those companies that were not. But I would love to get some help from some of our advisors on the list of companies that will not be receiving funds to ensure that we are contacting them and ensuring that, for example, they've applied for the pandemic unemployment assistance and working with them on getting through that, because they're a business owner and they applied for this grant, very likely they would qualify for the pandemic unemployment assistance. That goes all the way back to March 29th. And as every advisor knows very well, this is an incredibly difficult process to get through. So many people have applied and not been able to, like, if a person says they're interested in standby, then their application goes off into Never Land, and we have to wait to determine what ESD is doing about that. But Brandino Gibson and his staff have been helping us as they can go through that, but they are not what are called adjudicators that can decide on these applications, if they will be receiving funds or not. And since there's so much fraud that's occurring with this system, I believe they're going to be even more cautious about funding these approving more applications.
Colleen, I got an
Yes.
email this morning that they are limiting incoming calls to the claims center so that the claims affiliates can concentrate on more outbound calls and contacting individuals that are struggling, getting this approved.
Right.
I know from personal experience with my son, he was held up for 5 weeks because of a glitch in their system. They finally got it after 2,000 dials. He finally got through to the claim center and got it straightened out. But then he went to check in on his recall date on his standby at his employer, and they gave him another email saying they were extending it another 30 days. And he uploaded that with his unemployment claim. But every time he goes in on Sunday to apply for his claim for the next couple of weeks till he's called back, it says he has to do job search. They're not recognizing the second 30-day standby request. So
Okay.
they're working on it. They're
Yeah.
doing the best they can with the overwhelming
Need
response.
that they have. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got Brandino's cell phone number, so we contact him through that process, and then so it's kind of a bit of a backdoor for businesses in Clallam County. And so we collect the requests, and then I send them off to him, and then he asks his adjudicator at a particular point for help. So if there are some people, we'll get, the list of names and contact information, and then we send it to Brandino. And again, Brandino will be on at 8:30 when I have to jump off to give an update on the pandemic unemployment assistance process. I did look at, and maybe I can share my screen, but I did find on the ESD website the information about number of unemployment claims, and we are once again this week the second highest in the state. This is through May 8th, I believe. I want to pull it up here, but and I'll share my screen in a moment, but we are the number 2 in the state for the highest unemployment claims, with Grays Harbor being the first and Jefferson being the second. And, but that include any of the federal pandemic unemployment claim information. It's just for within the state regular employment. So when I have a minute here, I will pull that up. The other thing is the community development block grants. There's $75,000 available to businesses within Clallam County. We have done that first application, and those funds will be coming out through Clallam EDC, and Dickinson from the Center of Inclusive Entrepreneurship will be providing counseling services, business advising services rather, to those businesses. And we're waiting for our full application to be approved by the state. I have signed a sub-recipient agreement. However, it's got to be approved by Jefferson County Commissioners. So that will be next Tuesday. And then we should be able to provide funds from the Community Development Block Grant Program. Now, that being said, that's only for small business owners with 5 or fewer employees, including themselves, and they must be at 80% of area median household income. So it's $47,000 or lower for a family of 4, and we have a chart that we'll post on our website and have all the needed information on our website so that people can look at their tax returns and determine if they qualify for those funds. But they'll be on average around $4,000. And that's a total right now of just $75,000. So it's a small amount, but you know, anything helps at this point, I believe. Still on, yeah. Mike Rieckhoff, do you want to add anything? Do you have any updates to add?
I'm sorry, I keep on getting kicked off. I didn't hear the part right before this.
Oh, just I was talking about CDBG funding, that the county will have $75,000 for businesses that qualify for the community development block grants at 80% or lower of area median income, which is about $47,000 for a family of 4. So, but Michael, do you have any updates as far as SBA loans or any information that you've been provided through your conduits through the SBDC?
I mean, the biggest thing out there is that there are still PPP funds available. And if your bank is not taking applications, that there's the online lenders as well that are offering them. So one of those just this week got approved in 4 hours. So
that's great. Also, the National Development Council has funds that they received from the Balmer Group, and they too are doing PPP loans, and they're specifically focused on rural counties such as Clallam, but I don't know that their process would be any better or faster than what like PayPal or Cabbage or some of the other companies are still offering. Christine, have you heard about how much funding is remaining of PPP?
There's still quite a bit as of yesterday, and we are still accepting applications at First Federal, and I know if banks still are. I know First Security is also still accepting them. but it's interesting because a week ago Monday, they were predicting that the funds would run out by last Thursday. And on Thursday, there was still well over $100 billion. And I haven't seen an updated report, but what's happened is the size of the loans has gotten a lot smaller. So, you know, there was a flood at first, and now it's like a trickle. And even at a bank our size, we've seen that shift. You know, our large loans were not like a Chase Bank's large loans, right? They were in the 6-figure numbers and not in the 7-figure numbers. But most of ours now are very small that we've been doing for the last, say, 6 days.
Mhm. Okay, and are you taking applications from borrowers that don't currently have an account with First Federal?
We do, yes. We're accepting from non-customers who are located in one of our county footprints. So Clallam, Jefferson, Kitsap, Whatcom, and King.
Okay, great, thank you.
Christine?
And so if they're interested, they email ppp@ourfirstfed.com?
Actually, right now, we've put the link online, so they could go to ourfirstfed.com/PPP and apply there.
Okay, okay, great, thank you.
Christine, if I have a client who is languishing, say, with US Bank, for example, and have heard nothing, can they do a duplicate application with you?
We can. We're technically not supposed to accept it if they've applied elsewhere, but at this point, if they haven't heard back and they've applied a while ago, I'm happy to process it. And then if it was approved by the SBA, we'll find that out when we submit it. And
Okay.
we can send them back to US Bank to withdraw that application if they wanted. As long as there's funding, I'm willing to put people through the system. Just know that has come up as an issue when we've accepted applications where they've been at some of the larger banks. When we submit them through to SBA, we find out that they have already been approved and they're just working their way through a very large pipeline at the other bank.
Okay. All right. I'll reach out to you on this specific case.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's almost 8:30 for me, so I've got to hop off this call, but if people want to continue the conversation, you're more than welcome to. Are there any other questions people had at this point about reopening, for example? I know we're working with nail salons and hairdressers, and the EDC is hosting a webinar with Impact Washington for manufacturers so that they can understand what the protocols are for reopening. So if you have any clients that are manufacturers and you think they should be potentially on that list, let me know. Or if they're hairdressers, let me know, and I can make sure that your folks or you receive the information on what the state is working on with protocols. They anticipate, like as an example for hairdressers, the person responsible for creating the policy is the state's aerospace manager. So they don't have background in hairdressing. So they're working with some other states to try to create those protocols, and they're researching it. But if you have a client that would like to talk to, it's Robin Toth at the Department of Commerce, they might be able to shed some light on typical scenarios that may or may not work with protocols that the state is planning to establish for when they reopen. Well, with that, I need to jump off, but please feel free to continue the conversation. And Brian, if you'll host.
Yeah, I got it.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank
Okay,
you.
see you, Colleen. Well, as Colleen mentioned, there'll be a seminar or a webinar for the manufacturers. So if any of those people out there would like to join, we can get the information to them. Are there any further questions on anything?
Brian, what are you hearing as far as protocols for the doctor's offices and what they're going to be required to do for your small single practitioners?
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of back and forth on that, and especially with the dentist, because somebody's non-essential treatment is somebody else's essential treatment. And right now we're trying to figure that out. And I've reached out to various people up and down the West Coast trying to figure out what's going on with the dentist and the doctors. And right now there hasn't been a consistent answer yet that I've found, unless somebody else has heard something that is more up to date. But I reached out to the dental societies and a few of the medical people, but nothing yet, nothing definitive.
Making it real hard for these people that have gone for these PPP loans to do what they've got to do if they can't reopen.
I agree. And in fact, I reached out to, in fact, I even called a couple of the doctors I see, and if they've heard anything from their societies, and nothing yet. So I mean, everybody's been in the dark so far.
Hi, and regarding the PPP, what's important to remember is it is about payroll and not about necessarily the employees working. You know, my personal take on it is about keeping people off unemployment numbers. So even if you're not open, you just use those funds to pay them what you would normally pay them, and then that will be forgivable.
Right, but that doesn't, you know, that doesn't help the people that need to see these dentists, you know? I mean,
Right,
we've
it
got
doesn't help the
people
service
out
side.
there that, you know, we got to get these businesses back functioning. It's not about using the payroll to, you know, to pay their employees to sit at home. And that's just my personal opinion.
Hey, Brian, I've got a question
Yeah.
about this pandemic unemployment assistance, and I've got a couple, and Michael, you probably are aware of this too, but they seem to be having trouble trying to figure out whether they've been accepted for the PUA help, you know, on that thing, or how to access that thing. Does the ESD go back to those people and say either yes, you're on board, or no, you're not? I mean, it's just kind of goofy.
It's just, yeah, I talked to someone yesterday with the same problem, and I was hoping that maybe if Brandino joined us, he could give us some insight on that.
Well,
Because
sorry, Brian, didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I spoke with Brandino briefly yesterday, and he was basically saying, is this a situation you're finding where people apply for the POA and then it just doesn't show up because, or they apply for the regular in an attempt to get denied and then aren't able to see the PUA link because he'd been hearing rumors of it. And I was like, yes, I have 3 clients like that. So he's trying to get to the bottom of that as well. And he took it to the adjudicators and they were like, well, it must be working. So they're kind of discovering a few glitches. They're not sure what the cause is, but he's starting to investigate that. So.
Yeah, I think that as was alluded to before, there's this tsunami that has swept over everyone has exposed us as to being unprepared for such a huge event. I'm talking to one company right now that applied and for the EIDL, and they were cut down to 1/10 the size they applied for. And now they're going back as to, what were the metrics that were applied, because their application indicated they needed far more. But now, and they're just getting they're hitting a brick wall with no answer from anybody. So, I mean, it's a situation that, it's a problem without an answer at this point.
I did hear recently that idle loans have been cut down to a max of 150,000 in order to try and spread those funds out. That's not directly from the SBA, but there's a couple articles, I think it was in Forbes, that was about that.
Yeah, I saw that. And in fact, the amount they applied for was just below the 150. And so they were well within that metric, but now they can't get a response. The question then I asked them is how did the analysis go from SBA? And they cannot get an answer on what the analysis was, why they were cut down. So you can't argue back if you don't know what the metric was. That's one of the problems. So I mean, the government is overwhelmed, to say the least.
Yeah.
Well, and ESD had to basically redo their entire application system to adjust to the new rules, regulations, and I think by their deadline they were made part with there. So they're working out their kinks on the back end as well. So and that's the thing. As you discover kinks, please report that out to Colleen or Mike or me. We can get that information, Brendan. And if they don't know what's happening, they can fix it.
Breaking up there.
Sorry about that. I have a really loud connection this morning. I'll be quiet.
Yeah, really bad.
I have a question for Christine. This is Lena Washke, and my question is, what the forgiveness calculation is for this proprietors at P?
So you're cutting out. So tell me about his calculations.
For the sole proprietors, the Schedule C customer P.
So, my view is we're still waiting for all of the guidance from the SBA, but for First Federal, and we're preparing something that should be getting out to customers. Actually, you may have gotten it yesterday for yourself and clients, just about what we know now and what to gather. Our view is, we're in it together, right? We're not trying to minimize your forgiveness. We're trying to maximize your forgiveness under whatever the letter of the spirit of the law is. And so, we know how we calculated it going in, and we're going to try to use the same calculations on the other side. I'm using the actual Schedule C for sole proprietors. Line 31 was what we were using for their calculations, I believe, in most cases.
So is that on the 2019 Schedule C information, are we forgiving weeks of that amount or 10?
No, we would forgive so you take that Schedule C and you divide it by the 12 to get the monthly, right? And then that's times the 2.5. So then we would essentially show that person paid themselves that, and then what if there were expenses that they had separate. Like somebody was asking me about mortgage interest yesterday, and I think the sole proprietor is also using a home-based office and has let's say 10% of that home is used for business purposes, and in our mind so far, then 10% of that expense would be able to be included towards the 25% of non-payroll related expenses. Does that make sense? And if we're cutting it now, so if you want to contact me separately, that's great.
Yeah, I'll be in for sure, because we have a lot of people we want to just make sure that everybody's using them appropriately so that we're setting them up for success on the forgiveness.
Yeah, if you want to give me a ring or an email, that's great.
Okay, cool.
Hello, my name is Steve Stigler. Can you guys hear me? This is my first time in one of these Zoom meetings.
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve.
So I have a question on the non-payroll things that are covered, like utilities, rent. I was wondering, what is considered a utility for the PPP? Is phone and internet included in that, or is it just electricity and water and waste disposal?
That's a good question. SBA clarified on the call-in on Friday that internet, cell phone, and garbage sanitation services are all considered to be utilities.
Okay. And then I was also curious, and this might be a slight change of subject, but my business received a PPP loan, and I also got a EIDL, I guess the grant. And as I understand that those two do not combine together, but the EIDL grant that I got from applying a while back, that would be subtracted from the PPP total. So I was wondering if, and I could be wrong on that, if it makes sense to take that grant, if that could, and if I applied that, if it will subtract from the total I have for the PPP, could it work to keep the EIDL to pay costs, to kind of expand the costs I can pay to a greater than 8-week period? Or
That's entirely possible, but our stance as a bank is that that's something you'd have to talk with your accountant or your tax advisor about, because everybody's structure is so different. There's not really a global answer to that question.
This is Mike Rieckhoff from SBDC. I was just going to say, from the SBDC and what we've worked with the SBA, the guidance on that is what they're going to do is they're going to calculate what your forgiveness amount is on your PPP, and then they will subtract what you received as an idle grant for what your forgiveness total is. If you get an idle loan, you can document that you spent the money on the loan for something other than what you spent the PPP money for and use it that way. But the grant portion will be reduced from what you get for forgiveness.
should I consider it in the same parameters as a PPP, or could that be used outside of the 8 weeks? Because I'm wondering, like, and this is kind of an additional question, for invoices for things other than payroll, is it for the 8 weeks? I understand it can only be for 8 weeks. Can it be if the invoice for, say, a utility bill was created before the 8 weeks, but it's due within the 8 weeks, can that be paid out of the PPP funds, or does the invoice have to be created in that 8 week period?
That's one that the SBA is not given a lot of guidance on. There's a big difference between cash accounting and accrual accounting and where all that falls.
Yeah.
For the most part, the director of the SBA has said that if you take it when you pay it, and that's how you normally would record your business, they're going to accept that. If you normally do your business with an accrual accounting, you're going to have the bill that comes in next month that they then will bring back into this month. And the variance on that is probably going to be pretty small, although, you know, hopefully your utility bills will be getting smaller as it gets warmer out. But there's not clear guidance on that particular thing. Now, with regards to the idle, the grant portion is the only portion that's going to interact with the PPP loan. If you have a idle loan, you can use that outside the 8 weeks, as long as you just make sure you keep really good records.
Okay. Okay, but if you just got the grant, then I should probably just consider it as kind of part of the PPP funds.
Yes, because they're going to reduce the forgiveness amount by that grant amount.
Okay. And then if I may ask one more question, I'll stop asking questions. For an owner of a S Corp, which I am, so when I applied for the PPP, I kind of added up what I take typically as draws and paychecks to figure out my compensation to apply. For paying out of the PPP fund, should I only pay myself in paycheck? And is it okay to pay myself what I would have paid in draw and check, but just in the form of a paycheck? Would that be the preferred method?
I was going to say that the calculation on it when you got the loan included your draws. And so if you normally would be drawing money from this, that should be something that should be included. But once again, then I have to give the caveat that the exact policy has not been written, and that's getting into one of those fine points that we really probably need to look at the policy to see how they're going to treat that. In general, the draws normally end up on your tax return that you pay income tax on, and it should be included in what you treat as payroll.
Okay, thank you.
I got a question on that too, because I didn't think that the distributions, if you're an S Corp owner, could be used in that PPP calculation. I thought it was just the wage amount that you would take. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
No, the
I agree.
draw qualifies.
The
Only
distributions
subject to self-employment tax, I think.
Ah,
So if it's so for the S Corps, only payroll would count, not the distributions.
Yeah.
Unless you're paying self-employment tax on it, which most people don't. It was my interpretation anyway as well.
I was under the understanding that net earnings could be used in a situation where there is no wage.
If it's a Schedule C and subject to self-employment tax, I believe.
Okay, okay. And are you guys hearing me well at the moment? Because if so, I have another question I want to put out there.
Yeah, good reception now.
Okay, good. So, and this is very closely related. I have a small business, S Corp, 1 employee, and she did not use her own draw to calculate her PPP, only the salary of the 1 employee. But she's not sure she wants to bring that employee back yet because they're not open, and she'd rather not open just yet. Can she apply, and it's sounding to me like the answer will be no on this, but can she apply portion of that loan to her own compensation, even though she didn't use it to calculate the amount? Would that be forgiven or no?
If she makes a payroll for herself, if she's a Schedule C, she should be able to pay herself in payroll, then that should qualify. And it should be forgiven because there is only 1 FTE reported, it sounds like.
Correct. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Although Christine might want to chime in, but
Yeah.
I'm assuming that that's, what's going to be calculated is the lenders will be looking at the payroll and also the FTEs, those 2 numbers together to figure out the forgiveness.
Right. And so let's say that employee's draw was less than the owner's draw and that the loan was based on that employee, but then she submits just for herself. It just may mean that a portion of it is not forgivable for some reason, right? That's the worst case scenario.
And what portion would not be forgivable?
Well, if there's any difference in what the income was, that's all. So like, let's say the owner typically drew $3,000 and paid the employee $6,000, and that's how the calculation for the PPP was based on $6,000. And then the owner didn't bring back the employee and used it to draw the $3,000, then there'd be a variance of $3,000 between the amount of the payroll request and then the amount actually spent on payroll.
Right.
So, there's a potential that's always the worst case with this is there's a portion that's not forgivable, but we do keep trying to remind folks that then there's only a 1% interest rate on the repayment period. So it's still a relatively low cost of funds if it turns out that something changes because you didn't open your business or you ended up having to use the money differently.
And then there's also the 25%, which can be put toward utilities to reduce that.
Right, utilities, the rent on the commercial locations, the mortgage interest on commercial loans, or for sole proprietors with home-based businesses. We're hoping there's going to be some sort of calculation around that that relates to the apportionment for the taxes.
Great, thank you.
If a business applies for the PPP loan and puts a certain number of employees, I made my application with 7 employees, only 2 are full-time, 5 are part-time. one of my employees graduated from graduate school and moved on to a different job. So now I have 6 employees. Should I expect a reduction in my PPP grant if I have 6 employees, but they work the same number of hours as when I had 7 employees, or should I hire a 7th employee part-time to have the head count the same?
I wish I could answer that. I feel like so much of the guidance that we've gotten has been unclear, but I keep hearing, it's about maintaining FTE levels. So this is now not banker advice, just more personal advice that that's what I keep reading and hearing is it's about maintaining your FTE levels. So just trying to keep that in mind.
And FTE levels would be hours.
Yeah.
Right. And for a full-time equivalent, that's considered 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week?
Once again, we need guidance.
But again, not specific guidance. They haven't said that an FTE is a 40-hour or a 30 to 40-hour. I think in most cases an FTE is considered to be a 40-hour employee.
Okay.
Any further questions? Anybody have any thoughts?
I guess I have one more question. For the EIDL grant, if a sole proprietor company got a grant but did not follow up with the EIDL loan or PPP, should that grant will probably need to be paid back at some point?
No, the grant is a grant regardless. It will not be asked to be repaid at any point in time.
But in the case of a grant is received and then the PPP is received, then it does subtract from the PPP. But if you didn't get the PPP, then the grant is just the grant.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I do have one. Oh, what's that, Brian?
Oh, no, I just saw Brandino is on the phone. So if there were some questions. Yeah, Brandino, we had some questions if you can hear us.
Yeah, I can. And sorry about that. I have a staff meeting first thing in the morning, and it went pretty long this morning. So thought I'd try to jump in as quick as I could.
So if anybody had those questions for Brandino, now's a good time.
Well, I'll just go back to that, trying to find out if I've applied for the unemployment compensation there, pandemic. Then how do I find out whether I'm really getting the thing? I mean, that was that question early on, and there was a little uncertainty about the right approach to take to find out, okay, I've been accepted and the money's going to be coming at some point here, and I can access that information.
Yeah. So, Mark, good question. And I honestly, probably for the individual, or it's not really a way to see that, particularly in the e-services, other than the fact that they've been accepted. Again, feel free to connect with me, and I can at least look that up and figure out just where that's at in the process. So just a little bit of update information as of this morning. We're making in ESD, we're making a huge shift in the process and the way we're operating. So we're taking a lot of staff out of initial calls because we're not getting initial claims particularly anymore. Everybody's already filed a claim. The problem is we have just thousands of people that are waiting some, and in many cases, a very minor correction in their claim that needs to be taken care of before it can move forward. And there's just not enough staff to do that. So we're shifting a huge majority of our staff from doing and cutting back the hours for initial claim calls and moving them over to handle that task. So Friday night, there was a big change that was made within the system that basically went in and did some clearing of some minor issues. So we had stuff where people they claimed that they were getting retirement when they meant that they were actually paying into retirement. That held up their claim, and those cleared out. And I'm going in and looking at a bunch of those daily, ones that I had been maybe working with in the past, and looking at where those status are, and a lot of them are starting to just pay out now. So there's a lot of movement in that area, and that's where our shift is at this moment, is to try to fix all those issues that are out there to get everybody paid.
So Brandino, when we have issues like that, that have been languishing and we're a little concerned about, what's the best way to check on the status or push those forward?
Yeah, so, the two things to do are, one, the 833 number is the one that is going to get some answers. And I know it's not the best process, but that's where we're putting a shift to hopefully being able to get those answers. And then I would also say, again, you just feel free, don't worry about overloading myself and my staff. A lot of my staff are getting taken over in that area. We'll handle what we can. And at least in a lot of cases, Rick, it's just a matter of, doing a quick lookup and providing a response. And that's one thing that I found in a lot of cases is most people, and you're probably finding this as well, Rick, and those of you doing a lot of the groundwork out there. And I appreciate your assistance with helping with these applications, because it's not something we can particularly do. But it doesn't take me but a minute or two, or one of my staff a minute or two, to just pull up a claim and look at where it's at and potentially what step it's in the process to get moved forward. So that's okay. And if you have them, Rick, you can just email that information over to me. And in reality, just a name and their phone number that they use for their claim, I can look it up that way and get a good answer, or at least some sort of an answer.
Excellent. I've got a list for you.
Yeah, that's fine. And shoot that over. It may take me a little while to get through them, but absolutely do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon.
I did see looked like something came up from in the chat box as well. So, and I have here in about a minute, I'm going to sign into it as well. There's a lot of fraud issues going on out there. And so all of us staff are scheduled, and I'm scheduled at 9 o'clock. So I'll be jumping on that Skype meeting here statewide, where we're going to be doing fraud training for the next. There's an hour mandatory fraud training. Hang on, I'm going to mute this.
Brandon, what is the best way to report fraud? Like, one of my employees was fraudulent. There was a claim fraudulently filed in their name. What's the best course of action?
So the best, if you go to the ESD website and scroll to the bottom of the claim section, there's a link for fraud page. Go to that. The 800 number is just like all the others, are inundated with it. So there's an actual submission part in there where you can type in the information, and then there's a email address. It's ESD claims fraud, something of that sort. But the link is there for that, and then and send that in. And honestly, I've had several people that have called me, and we've had better results and quicker results, at least, because the first step is to get that claim stopped before it pays out. Because once it pays out, that goes into another issue where I've seen some where now the person who has received some unfortunate fraud and and that's paid out. Now they're getting a letter saying you owe us this money back, when in fact it's whoever received that money that owes that. And that gets corrected, and hopefully that's what we're going to find out here in a minute.
Hello, we'll probably send you,
Oh, hang on, let me turn that volume off there real quick.
I guess I'm a little confused on who's getting the payment in
on
this.
right next to the hang up button.
Say that again. Who's getting the payment?
Yeah.
Payment. So the payment is actually going out to whoever committed the fraud. So they get in, they get Social Security number, they get, in some cases we're getting individuals that are getting the letter in their mail. In other cases, we're getting, let's say, an employer that's, and I got an email the other day from an employer who's like, hey, I have like 3 of my employees that are fraudulently claiming. It's like, no, it's probably not them. It's somebody else that's claiming against them. So that money is going to a bank account for whoever's committing the fraud.
Wow.
But yet, as far as ESD is concerned, it's going to Rick Dickinson.
Right.
Yeah. So
I put that link to the fraud web page in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. And so if I get some more info or better insight, what I'll do is I'll send that over to the EDC, and then they can share that out as well. But probably would be good for me to, if we don't have any other pressing questions. And also, if you have any other pressing questions too, again, feel free to, shoot down through Rick got my email, Colleen has my email. You can shoot them my way, and I can see if we can answer those as well.
Hey, Brandino, before you, well, he's checked off. I was just curious, I was just curious about.
And a couple of
Got a little feedback here.
What's that?
Brandino, are you still on?
I am, yes.
I just was wondering, with some of the people I've worked with to get that pandemic unemployment, and they're not receiving anything or any information, is that a possibility of a fraud that is siphoning that money off?
No, yeah, and I don't. It's not the issue that we're running out of money. That's not a problem. And quite honestly, the problem is that we're so inundated with, especially with the self-employed piece, because that's not a normal piece of how we do business. So there's a lot of additional steps that need to be taken with those individuals, and we just don't have the staff to do that. And that's where I was saying earlier, we're shifting operation away from initial to fixing all those problems.
And, I had a question from a lady who is a commissioned salesperson, and she applied for regular unemployment, got denied, and got approved for the pandemic. How does that work? Since she doesn't get paid, of course, until she sells something or anything like that. She can't be on standby. She has to look for work. It's a little confusing.
Yeah. So
for self-employed.
Yeah. So let's get some clarification on that. At this point, standby honestly doesn't mean anything because job search is we're going to get a work search directive letter because it's part of the system. It just automatically goes out. The job search is not required at this time. So when filing the claim, they just need to select no, they're not looking for work at this time. But make sure they say yes, they are able and available to work.
Okay. So but they're not going to be looked at for fraud because they haven't done the job search, or they're they're working but not earning anything.
Right. Yeah, they're not yeah, not.
Everybody's breaking up. I don't know if I am as well.
Just a little bit, but my speaker, and I probably should go to jump to this training here real quick.
I need to hop as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks,
All
Brian.
right.
And oh, one last thing I would love to say is that we are actually hiring now that we're on unemployment. Center for Inclusive Entrepreneurship at 4% FTE assistant and business resiliency specialist full-time to help with these issues. And the jobs are posted on our website at cie-nw.org. If you know of anybody, please spread the word. We're
Rick,
hoping to
can you
hire
put that into
graduates.
the chat? Because you're breaking up really bad.
Okay.
Yeah, Rick, you're really breaking up. Great. There any other questions? We've lost Brandino, so if anybody else has any questions. If not, we'll close out the meeting and thank everyone for their time and their effort.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys. Thanks. Stay safe out there.